We're a group of women with lived experience who have come together. What we wanted was to come up with a name that meant these women were stepping out from the shadows and feeling confident enough and empowered to shout out, to speak up.
I think Manchester's always got a grand history of, women's activism and getting things done, really.
Manchester's vibrant and has always had strong women campaigning for women's rights. It's the birthplace of the suffragettes. They all campaign from here.
I think Law West is a very rich community.
I think Manchester is a great city and offers a lot of support for women, but I think there's a lot more that we can do, particularly thinking forward towards Devo Mang.
I think it's got the potential to be very positive. My concern would be that for small specialist charities like ourselves, it's quite difficult to operate on that size of a footprint, if you like.
For the next 5 years, hopefully, that will be more experience and transparency to see what exactly that devolution will be benefit.
If you look at the Corson report, that was 8 years ago, and unfortunately when we talk about the problems that are there for female offenders, they're all exactly the same as they were when Baroness Corson wrote that report. One of the main recommendations from the Corson report was that the needs of female offenders are best met in gender-specific, community-based centres. But I am hopeful that in the light of transforming rehabilitation, it seems that on a national level there is now some recognition that that is the best approach for female offenders. There's some recognition that we definitely do need specific female-only provision.
Women tell us all the time that they really value having a woman-only space to come to so that they feel safe.
I think services very often are planned with a typical service user in mind, and very often that typical service user is a man. Even if it's not a man, it's very often a heterosexual and or cisgender person. It very often can be a white person, and if you start not being some of those things, it can be harder for you to access a service.
Often we find that services that are open to all people, especially people with additional vulnerability, so things like drug and alcohol services, mental health services and things like that, they tend to be really dominated by male service users. It can be a really, really intimidating experience. As a woman with additional vulnerabilities, possibly with a child with her, possibly with the experience of violence from men and things like that, it makes it even harder for them to access.
It needs to be a safe place where a woman knows that she can go to just be her. Where there's no pressure, where she's not frightened of who she's going to bump into. She's not on high alert. That's one barrier that I've found for me personally.
It's a lack of confidence, and if they're going through whatever they're going through, they cannot, muster up the courage to go to an organisation and talk to somebody that needs support in order to do it.
That's one thing that I've really learnt. Just being confident and being able to talk about how you're feeling, because after you've been through a stressful period, you get a master of hiding behind a mask, and you don't tend to talk about who you really are and what your problems are or what you're facing. They can manipulate you, and when obviously by the end of it you think it's all your fault.
Because at that time you're at your lowest, and then you believe what they're saying, that actually what they're saying is right, so you're just saying, yeah, it's all my fault.
Coming to a refuge for an Asian woman is often associated with issues like shame and stigma, and she's always treated as a wrong woman, she's left home and she's no good and things like that. It kind of creates a blame culture, and woman starts believing that she is to blame for everything that's happened to her.
You tend to blame yourself, and also I think you feel guilty because you let it go on for so long. And then you think, well, why did I do that? Half of it's embarrassment, the other half is fear.
I was frightened that if anybody in any position, a professional position, if I was honest with them, that the children would be removed.
Many of the women can't speak the language, they don't know how the systems work. Often they are not even allowed to go to the doctors on their own. So this kind of oppression, where you're constantly mentally excluded from making friends or, finding sources of help, can make a woman's life really difficult.
हाँ, मैं ये कह रही थी कि हमें बता रहे हैं कि हम अकेली नहीं है, हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, कि हमारे अंदर से दर्द और जो खौफ है ना वो निकल रहा है और हम अपने पाँव में खड़ी हो रही हैं.
I was in depression. I was thinking that my life is end. But when I came here, I got to know that I'm not a weak woman. I can do anything.
It gives an opportunity to reach out to these people and speak in their language. It's really vital in getting these women to come forward and speak and share their issues and problems.
And they've got, incredible skills, all sorts of skills that as an asylum seeker or as a woman with no recourse to public funds, that label just demolishes all that.
If we don't tell women out there about the help available and how they can help, better help themselves and help their children, they're not going to know.
For women out there who aren't accessing services, to know that there's somewhere that they can go.
It's a very difficult process when a woman reports, and lots of women fall out of the criminal justice system. So if the woman's got mental health problems or there are other issues and she doesn't appear that she'll be a credible witness, it probably won't get to court. It's because if you've got multiple and complex needs, you're probably going to be more susceptible to sexual violence, and yet you're less likely to be believed. You're probably less likely to think you're going to be believed, so you're less likely to actually want to make a report. So the thing that makes you most vulnerable makes it most difficult for you to achieve justice.
It's complex, you can't, there's very few women that come in and they just want to deal with that one issue. There's always something else that's going on, so you kind of got to be on the ball about it.
So those kind of complexities always make it difficult for women to understand the level of abuse she has experienced and to seek help for it.
If you are in receipt of a number of different services, which lots of our women are, and you're living quite a chaotic lifestyle, it can be incredibly difficult for you to keep up with all those appointments, even for you to remember all the different professionals that you're supposed to be seeing.
80% of them we're working with, I'd say, have got issues with drugs and alcohol. A lot of women who have had experience of childhood sexual exploitation, mental health problems, issues about homelessness, domestic abuse and control. And they all come together and make it incredibly difficult for people to really take back control of their own lives and make their own choices and decisions.
And unfortunately, I do think that the most vulnerable women, women with complex needs, sometimes are the ones who fall through the cracks.
With that experience of trauma, combined with all the many different things people are struggling with, they really need somewhere where they can be safe.
Well, a lot of our women that come here wouldn't go to a supermarket because they don't go to a mixed environment to start off with. They've just gone through trauma. We're the only women on a food bank, I think, and I think we definitely want to keep it that way.
It's something that has always been really important to me, and something that has felt very, very threatened by austerity.
In the sector, people kind of fear that your funding will be tied into having to sort of a gender neutral kind of service.
Obviously, we're all living at a time where funding is constantly being cut. We're competing against allies often for a diminishing pot of funding.
We have had cuts in our resourcing, and so have the agencies we work with. So there's been a gradual tightening and squeezing of resources available.
The biggest barrier around the sort of national context and everything that's happening at the moment is secure funding. That's not a new thing, that's the situation across the board.
And that can lead to a tendency for services to kind of flatten out their offer to everybody and not be able to look at that sort of holistic, woman-centred approach.
Challenges have been huge, It's kind of, we're trying to come out as a small organisation, a crisis-led organisation, really focused on frontline service delivery. To keep pace with the external environment can be really difficult for grassroots organisations.
We're bound, by commissioners that might say, well, no, you've got to tick that box, and they've got to fit into.
Services for domestic violence are being contracted, and they're changing. The funders can say, we want you to work for men, we want you to have to do it in a certain way. And I think what we're saying is we need these specialist services, and we're going to fight for those specialist services.
We're always having to place bids in. We're not sure if we'll have funding for some of our services after the end of March. So we are collating our statistics, campaigning, looking at where the gaps are.
It's time to do things differently.
Try and kind of think outside the box here, where I think, no, well, let's have a look at this. You know, what's the way around it?
I do think we've moved away from thinking about the need for gendered services, and we need to reinvigorate that thinking and that idea. There is so much evidence out there of the needs for women who may be at risk of all sorts of poor outcomes.
There seems to be really large gaps. There's not enough preventative work done.
I believe prevention is better than having to cure.
Problems have become more serious for women because intervention hasn't been at the right time.
It's about really, really good access to preventative mental health services, drug and alcohol service, good quality housing, childcare provision. It's the full package really, because people live their lives in lots of different dimensions.
So what is it that woman needs? No point in doing the counselling if she hasn't got a roof over her head.
I'd like to see a more person-centred approach, where it's dealing with that person with their issues and everything around it, not just one thing, whether that's drugs, homelessness, mental health, domestic violence. I think there needs to be some better communication between all of those.
An appreciation of when a person comes to your service, what they may have experienced before that brought them there, how their experience will have informed everything that happened to them before they came into your service or another service.
It's completely individualised around her needs and her wishes.
It needs to services which have the individual at the centre, and services working around them and with recognising that individual strengths.
We don't want to compete. We're a women's service. We want to work collaboratively where possible.
By working together, partnership is essential. You can't work on your own.
My hopes really, for the women that I'm working with at the moment, is that they just go from strength to strength, and I can see the shift, I can see them moving, and that they take part in those services, you know. They take part in building and shaping the next service, because you just can't beat somebody who's been through that experience and gone to the other end. You just can't beat it.
Services have to be informed by women's experiences throughout, and they have to be designed in a way that hears what individual women are saying as they go through their journey.
Female peer mentors working with women and sharing those experiences, it's got to work. And to see that, you know, your support worker or your peer is on this sort of journey.
You know that you're connecting with somebody else who's been through that. They've come through it and we're okay. You know, I'm living proof that things can change.
There are so many things you could see it if you live it, and it's just inspiring.
5 years in now, my life is completely different. That self-worth, that self-esteem that I didn't have, you know what I mean?
I want them to know their worth, and it takes a woman to stand up and do that.
You just don't know where it's going to take you.
I can speak now. I feel like me again.
It's a group of the women, by the women, and for the women. It's a women-led group. No men are allowed.
As women, we work together as a team because we are here to comfort each other. Because what we are going through is I would say, it's a trauma. It's not easy. So even when you are home, then you try to feel down. You come here, you see that you have the same women who are in the same situation as you. So you feel relieved.
To actually hear it out of the mouths of the women, it's just honest and it's the truth.
We are the women of Manchester, and it's for freedom we are fighting now. Oh, heavy Lord, heavy Lord.
Having some space and some time for all those services to come together, to celebrate what we do well, to raise awareness of what we're not getting quite so right, and to make connections across those services is invaluable.
All the different groups that work with women in Manchester to have a greater understanding of what we all do, and how to access each other's services.
Because communication's key. If everyone can talk,
we can work together in communities by making the communities stronger.
It's about community cohesion, work together.
And it's an opportunity to celebrate women's success, whether it's a woman who has survived abuse, or it's the workers who've transformed lives, or it's organizations that are giving a lifeline.
It's very empower women to stood up to say what they want.
To actually talk to each other and strengthen our bonds so that we can take that forward.
And understand the importance of having a well-resourced support structure that empowers women, increases the visibility of women and allows them to raise their voices.
Deeds, not words. I think that is so important. Just get on and do something.
I've been seen today, I've been heard today. That's big.
I am a woman, I can speak, nobody can stop me.